We've seen that the ancestral Pueblo people were pretty sophisticated. They were capable of creating Pueblo dwellings up 5 stories. They had regional centers. They had roads. They had a pretty impressive sun calendar. So, what in the world happened to these folks? We aren't 100% certain, but we have some pretty good ideas. The period of peak development of Pueblo complex dwelling would have been the 11th to the 12th centuries. That's when we're building and I'm going to say expanding our Pueblo dwellings. Yet by around 1300, the people have disappeared. And that has left archaeologists with a mystery to explain. They have a number of theories, and I think probably all of them work together. The first is, and this can be documented, that the region began to experience a series of droughts in this period. And I'm not talking about a single year, but an extended period of droughts. And that can wear down a society. We believe, and this is what I would like to stress, that this was worsened by deforestation. In other words, by the cutting down of trees. Okay, why are we cutting down so many trees? Well, because our population is flourishing, our society is growing, we have a good socioeconomic base, and we keep expanding. Every time we expand and build more structures, we cut more trees. I've got a cross section of, again, one of the rooms, excuse me, one of the buildings. This shows us all the wood. This is the remains of the timber that would have been used to support the upper level. Every time we get to another level, we're going to be doing the same thing up above. This is what this looks like, a strong crossbeam here, think tree, supported in opposition by other trees, and then another beam up above. And I have a diagram showing us 3 levels, 3 units over here that will indicate, and this would be, oh, and we have a balcony, which takes trees too. All of this would be tree trunks. So each tree trunk is an individual tree. Why is this a problem? As we cut the trees are no longer holding moisture in the soil, and the desert-like region is becoming more desert. About the same time, there are newcomers. These folks are the Navajo. They come from the north. They migrate down. They're one of the Athapascan native peoples that's a language group who will come into this region. The Navajo are going to stay. The ancestral Pueblo people are going to move, and they're going to move on to, oh, not that far away, but still at a distance to other Pueblo complexes. And they will become the descendants of the ancestral Pueblo people. We recognize their names today. Probably the most famous, Zuni, also Hopi, would be among them. The traditions continue in these modern pueblos, and a number of the beliefs of the ancestral pueblos continue to emerge and show up on modern creations of pottery, just for example. As resources become scarce and more people depend on those resources for survival, there's also evidence of warfare. This is a slide of a skull of someone I think you could say died having a very bad day. You can see an arrowhead in the middle of his skull at the very top. We have indications that there was a serious motivation to leave the region, not just because of dwindling resources, but also because of the violence associated with trying to control those resources. Among the evidence, there's and a pretty substantial evidence that has been documented by archaeologists. There is evidence of cannibalism. We've collected scraped bones, the way a butcher would take a big knife and scrape the flesh off of an animal bone, for example. Bones that have also had the marrow removed or extracted, and skulls that clearly have been cooked, and the brains have been eaten as a food item. How can we be sure of this? Well, in at least one site, an archaeologist was able to collect a sample of human defecation, It had it tested, and it tested for animal protein. In other words, the individual had consumed human flesh. Some of the bones, not all of them, the skulls were broken apart. Some of the bones were left on the surface, and others were taken away to living areas and have later been found in the trash. What we think has happened is that some of the bones were the flesh and the bones were consumed at the site, and the bones were left there as a warning. In other words, to intimidate others that this property belonged to the people who had taken control of the land, and in a display of their power had slaughtered these people and consumed their flesh. In other words, this is a kind of effort to intimidate others to claim territory. We might today call it a form of terrorism, domestic terrorism, I guess. The remainder of the human was taken someplace else where the flesh was consumed there. There is a problem with this. Local folks today, people, the Pueblo dwellers today, have resisted this interpretation. Why? Because it's white anthropologists who have done the research, and no one wants outsiders to write their own history. So there is an increased effort to recruit local native peoples into archaeology to do more intensive investigations of this region. This does give us an explanation for why people were building in such close harmony with nature also. It was constructed in a period when there was competition over resources, when people were fighting with each other, when perhaps your family's life was in danger. So what are you going to do? You're going to put your buildings against a cliff wall out of visual sight, and you're also going to place them in a region where you think they could be protected easily. Some of these become rather extreme, and it's even difficult to reach the Pueblo complex. This would be one example here, and another located over here. This right here is this detail that we're taking a look at. This is another example that's fairly famous. It's called White House Ruins. It's located in Canyon de Chelly, and this is the image of a very small Pueblo complex that is truly embedded in the cliff wall. Sometimes it is, in fact, very difficult to reach these sites.